It's the 30th of June 1944, and one of Finland's legendary Flying Knights gets behind an enemy P-39 and opens fire. The Soviet pilot spots the tracer zipping past and instantly dives to evade. The pilot, Ilmari Juutalainen, follows suit, both aircraft plunging towards the ground. The Soviet pilot attempting to evade the Finns' precise volleys, to no avail. Ilmari dumps round after round of his machine guns into the enemy plane, saving his cannon ammunition until the perfect moment. The airspeed indicator keeps climbing, the altimeter dropping fast. He switches to his cannons and pushes the trigger. A barrage of 20mm is launched across the air, the shell slamming straight into the rear of the P-39 and shredding its tail. The remains of the tail zip past his cockpit, narrowly missing him before he pulls off the chase. He looks back at his prey and watches as it crashes into a village below. But he has no time to worry about the people on the ground. He pulls up, scanning the skies for a fight. He immediately spots his enemy as another of the P-39s flies past his nose, escaping the brawl with the rest of Ilmari's squadron. Ilmari gets on the chase, pulling up behind it in pursuit. The enemy notices him and tries to turn to evade. But Ilmari fires a single cannon round. It strikes square into the middle of the enemy's fuselage, striking the engine and engulfing the machine in flames. He leaves the enemy to its fate and turns back to catch up with the rest of his flight, which by now is pursuing the remaining Airacobras as they flee for the Soviet border. He's far back, watching his friends in hot pursuit ahead. Another P-39 turns into a fireball and falls earthbound. But then he gets a bad feeling. That cloud he had seen a while back had been odd. He looks back and spots it on the horizon. Ilmari looks closer. His eyes go wide. That's not a cloud. It's a bomber formation. Dozens of Yak-9s, leading more than 100 PE-2 bombers between the formation of Alay-5 Lavochkin fighters keep escort, and behind it, even more Yak-9s fill the air. It's the worst thing they could have possibly stumbled upon, but Ilmari doesn't doubt for a second.
Forget the Cobras. There's bombers on the horizon. Follow me!
The flight turns for battle. Climbing high above the formation and side by side with his wingman, they dive upon the first flight of Yak-9s they see, charging straight into the enemy with their allies hot on their heels. The Soviet fighters dive away and Ilmari chases them down. They turn left and right in evasive action, but Ilmari carefully takes aim and opens fire. The barrage immediately cuts down the enemy, shaving off its wing and sending it tumbling into the earth. The second Yak increases his dive, desperate to escape using its superior top speed. The Finn lets it go, more focused on the bombers. He rises back into the melee where the rest of the Finnish flight is busy with a flurry of Yaks, just when a burning Soviet aircraft flies right past his nose. Ilmari looks over at the bombers and sees them opening their bomb bays. Below them, the town of Juustila comes closer. He slams the throttle to full and races for the formation, but a flight of 4 Yak-9s turns to meet him. Ilmari and his wingman are forced off their attack run, maneuvering away from the crosshairs of the pouncing Reds. They split away, each hounded by 2 Yaks hot on their heels. Ilmari twists and turns in the air, playing his 109 to all its strengths. In the fight, he catches a glimpse of the PE-2s dropping columns of ordnance. He continues with evasive action, crisscrossing left and right, until the Soviet pilot makes a fatal mistake. He overshoots, and Ilmari pounces on the opportunity. He sweeps behind the Yak, and the enemy dives to escape. Ilmari follows the all-too-familiar maneuver. The pair are picking up speed towards the ground as explosions rock the town below them. Ilmari prepares his shot. He has him right where he wants him. The volley is short and deadly, cutting straight through the enemy's fuselage. It bursts into flames and spins out of control, becoming one more explosion in the war-torn land. Ilmari rises back into the sky. The bombers and their escorts are long gone. He looks at the ground and sees the dust lingering above the bombed town. He thinks to himself, there's not much we can do now. But that's not the end of their day. The night's flight regroups over the town. Not one of them had been shot down. Even Ilmari's wingman, who also had 2 Yaks on his tail, came out on top. They're flying back to base, when they are once again faced with the call of duty. Another formation of Soviet bombers appears through the clouds, even more PE-2s, but this time accompanied by Il-2 Shturmovik ground attackers and Lavochkin 5 escorts. Ilmari glances at his fuel. It's marginal. They'd be taking a big risk if they attack this formation. Full of determination, they turn into battle for the third time. Ilmari leads the charge, diving to the attack with a PE-2 square in his crosshairs. His finger hovers over the trigger when he spots a Lavochkin 5 sweeping in behind him. In a rush, Ilmari pulls out of the dive and turns away as a Soviet aircraft speeds past underneath him. Incredulous, he looks back to see the Lavochkin flying away at speed. The underpowered LA-5 was no match for Utilainen's Bf-109G6. Many Soviet pilots were inexperienced at this time and hastily trained, but by using his speed to break from the attack and get back to defending the bombers, this pilot most likely avoided becoming another statistic on Ilmari's victory tally, at least for now. Ilmari is unsure as to why the pilot made a run for it, later joking,
He must have been in a hurry.
Then his low fuel warning lights up. He must make his way back to base. But more bombers are right there. Just below him, an Il-2 Shturmovik is following along the road. The Shturmovik lines up its target, releasing rockets and guns at the Finnish positions. Ilmari just can't stand by and do nothing. Despite his fuel being low, he makes a decision. He's going in. He turns and dives to intercept. Last month, only 1 in 4 people who watched our channel was a subscriber. If we could make that 1 in 3, we'd be well over 1 million subscribers. If you enjoy this video, we'd really be very grateful for your subscription. Thank you. Swooping in from above, his 20mm volley strikes the Shturmovik. Ilmari's aim is deadly, and his shots rip through the wing and engulf the Soviet plane in a ball of flame. The Shturmovik turns out of control and crashes violently into the Finnish forest. Ilmari turns away for home, but the Lavochkin 5 that Ilmari saw breaking off from before returns in hot pursuit. This time, it seems, he won't be breaking away from the fight. This was to be his 6th and last dogfight of the day. In his book, he describes the fight in detail like this. Again, one LA-5 appeared behind me. I pushed the throttle open and started a climbing turn. My pursuer stayed inside my turn, trying to pull a proper deflection, while I rolled away, a little more over it. Now the enemy pilot had to pull more, and he got his nose towards me, but not ahead of me. I guessed that he would try to shoot anyway, and he did. He tested his guns at a range under 100 yards. His tracers, of course, went behind me due to lack of deflection. I waved my hand to him to show, "You're missing!" I had nothing to worry about, because I beat him in the climb by 330 feet when we got to 13,000 feet. And then we would see what happened. He was falling steadily farther behind because I was making him pull to the inside of the turn and maintain a higher bank angle, and due to his continuous efforts to draw deflection and shoot. I rolled my fighter into a steeper and more nose-high turn, and he followed. Then I rolled inverted over the top of him. This startled my opponent, and he rolled nimbly over at his small speed and began a vertical dive. This was what I had been waiting for. I pulled my stick back and went into a vertical dive in pursuit. I made some small corrections with ailerons, and we dropped like stones for 7,000 feet. Then it was time to pull up. The target slipped into the climb so quickly that I didn't have time to shoot. The recovery and pull-up were so tight that I blacked out momentarily. When my vision returned, we were going up vertically and then, via half loop, down again. This sequence was repeated several times until, in one vertical pull-up, when the target was pulling nearly inverted at the top, I pulled tightly, expecting a stall at this low speed. The target was well in my gun sight and the deflection was proper. I shot. Flames flashed out of the airplane, although the tracers seemed to have gone into the cockpit, but I must have hit the fuel tank. Ilmari Utilainen would land back at base, running on fumes, along with the rest of his squadron, with not a single hit to his plane. It was his most successful day of the war, raking in 6 victories. He was offered a promotion for his actions, but turned it down, fearing it would keep him from fighting. The war would end just 3 months later, with Finland forced to cede territory to the Soviets. But thanks to the actions of Utalainen and many other brave soldiers like him, Finland kept its independence. Incredibly, he finished the war without a single shot to hit his plane from an enemy fighter. We'd like to thank the Finnish Aviation Museum for their help in sourcing the research we used in this film.